Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the Truth Table. I'm Paul Everton, and this is episode 78. My guest today is running in the federal election. His name is Charles Zach, the PPC candidate for Burlington North and Milton East. And we're going to find out why he jumped and put his name in the race, what drew him to politics, and why he picked the People's Party right after this. It's April 21st, just a mere 7 days until the election. And none of us know exactly what's going to happen if that majority of non-voters could, vote. That would be awesome. They could actually win the election being non-voters. That kind of shows you how much issue people have with trusting who is elected. And that's probably why they don't vote, because they don't have any confidence. I'd like to thank my guest, Charles Zach, for coming. Thanks for coming, Charles.
Hello, everybody out there. Happy Easter Monday to those who are following it. Yes, my name is Charles Zach. I'm running for the People's Party of Canada in the beautiful riding of Burlington North Milton West.
Indeed.
I'll give you a little intro. I won't bore you too long, but I've lived in Burlington all my life. I'm married with children. I'm a Canadian patriot, and my dedication in politics is to make the future a better one for the youth and my children. I'm not new to politics. I've run in local campaigns before, formerly as a libertarian at the provincial level. I'm retired now, but my former job was a registered lobbyist. I was a gun lobbyist, and I was thoroughly entrenched with the Conservative Party of Canada for over 20 years. So I served on many boards in this area when it was first Halton, and it was split up again. Eventually, I formed with a friend of mine the Oakville North Burlington. That was also dissolved, and now we have the Burlington North Milton West riding. So that's up for contest now. So why am I running? Well, like many of you in Burlington and Milton who grew up here, the place is unrecognizable from what it was even 10 years ago. Rising crime, unaffordable housing, excessive taxation, high energy costs, inflation, high food prices, home interference in our democracy. It's all subverted our Canadian or traditional values and transformed our once peaceful region into one of the most unaffordable, unsafe, unethical, and unrecognizable areas in Canada. And I don't know what happened. Well, it wasn't like this 10 years ago, and I guess we know why. The Liberals took the helm at that point and churned everything up. Anyway, the last government was absolutely tone deaf, ideologically motivated, and instituted many bad policies that is now coming home to roost. And I've mentioned those already. Like, I've never seen this kind of thing in my riding ever. And sadly, I was very close to the politics in Ottawa. And when you sit that close to the campfire, you have a better perspective of, than the average Joe out there. And I can tell you that if you think things are bad, they're worse. It is absolutely a mess. the corruption, the lying, the ineptitude. It's systemic and it's institutionalized now, and
Yeah,
it's just a joke.
I have to agree. I mean, I got involved with the Libertarian Party in 2018, and I tried running, and it's a dirty game. It's really, but yeah, the laws that have been passing, they've been incrementally encroaching on parental rights, harming children too,
Oh yes.
with the through education and making them wear masks all day. I mean, that's absolutely obscene because of the moisture buildup and the warmth is just a breeding ground for problems. So it was very harmful. Also, not saying facial expressions is detrimental to their learning. They have to see the whole face and the expressions. So they really harmed a generation of children by what they pulled off. So, what was it about the PPC party that uh, got you to choose them over the others?
Well, like I mentioned before, I was a staunch conservative until recently, and
Mm,
I've seen them degrade into the deeper depths of red Toryism. And I've had many of
yeah,
my colleagues now basically come to me and goes, Charlie, why did you leave the CPC? And I said, well, frankly, I didn't leave the CPC. The CPC left me, right? So I am a small C conservative slash
hmm
libertarian guy. And, they're doing it again. You know what? They're sliding left, even left than they were before. They always do this, at the election. They pretend to be conservative and then they get in and then they go completely red Tory, and then they just keep tinkering with bad infrastructure, bad policies. They don't actually come out and do reforms. I mean, some of the things that
yeah,
they actually instituted themselves is no longer even conservative. So I looked at the PPC. They're recording me. I was hesitant at first because I knew I'd burn a lot of bridges, and that's okay. I do that. But I love their platform. It's a conservative platform. If anybody out there is looking to vote conservative, right, it's going to be the PPC. The CPC
yeah.
is no longer conservative.
But I think it's even better than conservatism because as a libertarian, I feel aligned with the People's Party. Like they don't conflict with my libertarian values at all. You know, it's really trying to free the country. And Max answered every question I had. I mean, I even asked about what they're spraying in the skies, and he addressed it directly, without question. No other politician would even do that. They would
You know,
say it's a conspiracy theory, and that's how they dismiss anything. Like, I feel bad for Canadians because they lie to get elected, and then they go do an about face, and there's nothing for Canadians to do to, no confidence to just kick them out. Like we have no redress. We have nothing uh, to stop them once they get their ticket. Once they get their seat.
well,
But
there is, but
every yeah,
I
there
was
is.
going to say if I could just interject, and this is one of my
Sure.
one of the planks that I stood on and resonated actually quite well when I was running as a libertarian was recall legislation. So,
Yeah,
anybody out there is working in the private sector, if you don't do a good job or you're inept, or just incompetent, right, you'll get your three strikes and you're fired, right? So, there is no reason why we can't apply the same rules to our public servants who are corrupt, inept, or just not doing the job for us anymore. So, this recall legislation that it's instituted in the states all over the place. It works, right? It's a referendum where when people have had a belly full of their representative, they force a vote on it, and their representative can be terminated and replaced. So that's a great way to start. But
I think so. Yeah.
yeah, it is. It is. Nobody's talking about that except again, the CPP and the libertarians out there because
Mhm.
that's one of the things I definitely hear at the doors. It's the big things, of course, are affordability, but the second
Right.
part is accountability. So
Yeah.
we've got people in, well, look at my MP, Adam Van Coverden, right? He was the MP in the Milton riding and he's basically hopped into this new one now. And for years, he's been putting lip service to the CN intermodal hub that's being built right here in Milton, off of where is it? Off of Lower Baseline and Tremaine. Just for people who don't understand what this is, the CN has basically they've expropriated a concession of land. It's huge. It's multiple acres of land, and this is going to be a central staging ground for trains and transport trucks. Of course, because they're right next to the 401, this all makes sense. But here's the rub, right? So the federal government, that's their purview. They more or less just ramrodded this thing through. The people of Milton were upset about this whole thing coming on, and they gave them lip service and fake consultation the way they usually do. And there was Adam basically, pretending to do, say that he's going to do something. Well, he failed, right? They're already building bridges, in this area. This is a go. He keeps saying, "Oh no, we're going to keep fighting this." And at the last meeting we had, he goes, "Oh, I'm going to have another meeting with Carney." You know what? They've broken ground. The lawyers I've talked to, they said that this is a lost cause now. It's basically locked in. You can maybe delay the construction, but to throw extra millions of dollars of legal costs at this thing is just a waste of taxpayer resources. Once again, this is federal overreach, run amok, and the MP in that area, and then Coverden, right, failed the area, and he does not deserve your vote for this.
No. I think that it's quite possible that some are corrupt, but I think some of them may have been compromised somehow. And they may live under threat. So, that's also a possibility. After the last election, over 200,000 mail-in ballots were found that would have changed the results a year later, and yet nothing was done about that. The results weren't changed. The vote wasn't respected. So, how do you feel about mail-in ballots?
Well, you know what? You've touched on one of my pet peeves, right? And none of the other major mainstream parties are actually talking about this. And what I'm talking about is foreign interference in Canada in our democracy, and not just at the federal level, but the provincial, the municipal, in the bureaucracy. This is a fact, okay? And it's been going on for a long time. It's accelerated under the Liberals in the last 10 years because they just turned a blind eye. But if for anybody who's following this stuff, the RCMP red flagged this. They went to the PM. He totally ignored it, right? And it is here. And it's not just the Chinese, right? It's the Indian government, the Pakistani government, the Iranians are here. Canada is a soft spot known for weakness, and that's why the foreign interference is happening here. Now, and everybody heard about the Hogue report that came out as a result of this, because there was a huge backlash from the public. What's going on here, right? Well, the Hogue Commission, which was set up by the Liberals, of course, and stacked with Liberal people, came out with their report in, I think it was January, and said that nothing to see here. Sorry, no traitors. The RCMP were wrong. No. Even Justin Trudeau said that he knew who these compromised people were, and the report does not reflect that. And here's the real thing, right? So the whole report concludes, they take no questions, and they bury the evidence for 99 years. Why?
Wow. Nobody gets fired.
But here's my point now. Okay, so how can we have an election like this now?
Yeah.
Who are we really voting for? We don't even know who you're voting for. Is it another Manchurian candidate? Is it a representative or a foreign spy that's been planted here from India or Pakistan, right? You don't know. So in my view, all the mainstream parties and their candidates are suspect and don't deserve your vote. The only people that are outside of this national disaster, right, is the PPC. We are not involved, right?
Yeah.
If you're going to vote
Yep.
for somebody, vote for us. I'm telling you,
Yeah.
you send me to Ottawa, and I'm gonna open up that Hogue thing, and we're gonna
Yeah.
find who these people are, and we're gonna go through due process, and maybe some of these treasonous people are gonna go to jail.
And they should. My issue is no one was fired. They're still there. They're still running, and even though the leader, Justin, knew their names, there was no. He did nothing about it. No one was fired there. So we definitely have a huge, huge problem, and I know we don't have the I say we, but that the Canadians don't have confidence anymore, and I think they're justified. It's almost like we need to reset the system.
No, you know what? I totally agree. Like I'm hearing this at the door, right? Everybody has lost, trust. Not just in politicians, but the whole judiciary, even the state security. Everybody is suspect because mass media is, well, it's basically state funded propaganda now. There's no
It
place
is,
to
yeah.
turn for the truth. Everybody's lying, covering up, and not telling us what we want to hear. So once again, how do we have an open and clear election here when we don't have these answers before us?
Yeah.
Like I said, you may be voting in somebody that is not working for Canada, right? And it's ongoing. There's I think where is it, in Scarborough someplace, there's a Chinese conservative MP that's being targeted by the Chinese CCP there on social media. So they're muting what he can say, and they're intimidating the Chinese community that's on those channels. This is still going on. So, and
Yeah.
here's the real rub. Okay, so they keep saying something about Pierre Poilievre not having security clearance. He does. Okay, so he knows, right? Mark Carney also now has security clearance. He knows. The
Yeah.
Liberal caucus, they have security clearance. They know. Everybody knows, and everybody's being quiet because I'm. And this is just speculation on my part until we reveal this for sure. But I'm sure that each one of the mainstream parties, the Conservative, the NDP, maybe even the Bloc, and certainly the Liberals, have been colluding with foreign agents against Canada, not for our interests, but and working, against Canada and not for Canada.
Yeah. I would agree. Would you be all for, um, you know, getting these laws removed that have hurt freedoms, and like the what was that bill, C4, was it?
Oh, just C4.
Uh,
So let's talk about that for a second. So
sure. Yeah.
for the people out there that don't understand what this is, C4 is actually, it was a bill that was started by the Conservatives. So we found out that the Conservatives brought this bill. It's called C4. It's about transitioning youth and parental rights. Okay, so from what I understood and what the insiders have told me is that this was meant to be a trap for the Liberals, and it wasn't supposed to become law. It was supposed to become embroiled in some kind of liberal mess in the end. Anyway, that didn't happen. But what did happen was that it went through the machinations of going through law. So it went through first reading, second reading, third reading, went to the Senate, and because they didn't require a vote, but because there was no dissent, it became law. So now, if you have a daughter or a son that's prepubescent that is gender confused and wants to take puberty blockers or do something more extreme with surgery, and the parent tries to intervene, it is now a criminal offense, and
Yeah.
you end up in jail. This is a conservative bill, right?
Yep.
What? I shake my head. I mean, that is
It
that's
is.
been worse than the liberals.
But to me, it's just pure evil. We're not supposed to harm, children. It's very biblical, and
Yeah,
this is doing exactly. It's also biblical. The first thing he did was legalize marijuana and bestiality, which is also biblical.
terrible.
It says not to do that. It says not to mix seeds, but it also, you know, in the garden. But it also says not to mix, species.
Yes.
So I just see it as an evil party that just embraced, being anti-God. Like
Well, you know what?
the first covenant. Yeah, and
Well, you know
just
what? They've condemned themselves, and like you said, in the Bible it says, better to put a millstone around your neck and
yeah,
jump into the ocean than
yeah,
harm the children. You know
yeah,
what? It's coming, right? One
and
way or the other, that
yeah,
there's gonna be a consequence. So
yeah,
this
and there
cannot
should
stand.
be. I mean, they can't elude the creator's presence. The creator's always present, so they didn't elude him.
Well, you know what?
Power and money doesn't elude judgment,
Yes.
but I mean, they made it obvious with and even the pride flag and the
Mhm.
pride thing. I mean, do it in a bush somewhere if you want to dance around naked and be provocative with same sex. That's fine. And with children, let them be confused. That's a part of life. It's normal. They're exploring themselves, finding themselves.
Yeah.
There's nothing you can't put a label on that because they may change their mind until they're like adults. That's when they'll know their course and what their beings and core in who they are and what they think. There won't be, they should be allowed to be. They're taking advantage of a natural process
Yeah.
that just needs to be left alone.
Yes. And the
Leave
study
them
shows
alone.
that, left alone, these
Hmm.
gender confused prepubescent kids
Yeah,
eventually work themselves out of that and become young men and women, right?
yeah,
So, you know, intervening early and confusing them with this thing, they're just delaying the normal maturity process. And that's
and
wrong.
it, yeah, and it's radical. I mean, they're removing parts and stuff that
Oh my
will
God.
make them sterile. They'll be eunuchs, basically.
Yeah.
They'll never have orgasms. They'll never have children, and
Sterile.
then but this dark liberal government offers them maid
Yes.
when they're 12, when
Yeah.
because their lives are already destroyed at this point. By 12 years old, they realize what they've done,
Yes.
you know. But to allow a child very young to do that,
God
I
help.
can't even believe it. It's so obscene and so evil. And so, would you so that'd be a bill you would fight to rescind then?
Well, I am unabashedly pro-life and
Yeah,
pro-traditional family.
yeah,
So everything goes along with that, I am for, and everything that goes against that, I am against it. Okay, so there is no compromise. I'm not going to compromise
yeah,
on that kind of thing.
no,
There is no
yeah,
compromise, right? 2 plus 2
yeah,
equals 4. It doesn't equal 5, and I'm not
yeah,
going to compromise just because you don't like it.
yeah.
No,
But this is all Marxist games. This is what they do. They confuse. They want to confuse the children.
totally.
And
Well, I'm going to tell you,
very
Paul. My
yeah,
mother and father came from communist Hungary. Okay, so I am very well versed, in the indoctrination of the kids by the state. Okay, they want,
right.
like you said, they want to remove, our Lord, the God, because they want to be small g God in their lives.
Yeah, yeah,
And that's the original sin. I mean, and that doesn't go
yeah,
anywhere. And of course, we all know that Marxism and Leninism and communism and
yeah,
our current version of liberalism and the
yeah,
NDP it's all the same stuff, right? It does not work. It doesn't, right? All
no.
those different experiments are on the heap of disaster in history, and it cannot be repeated.
It just amazes me that we can even have that these people can even try to run an election when they're so immoral that they they should be in jail. But
But
I'm anti
yeah,
kill too, anti made, but I'm also anti war. I don't
yes,
think we should involve ourselves or
amen.
spend
No,
Canadians' money to kill innocent people on the other side of the world for
yep,
God knows who, the
terrible.
Committee of 300 and the
So
Rothschilds and what
let's
have
talk
you.
about that, Paul. So this comes up a lot, especially from the Ukrainian community. They say, Charlie goes, will you continue to send billions of dollars, to the Ukraine and, send our limited resources there? I unabashedly say no. Okay. Not our war, not our flag. No, I would definitely get out of that right away. Right. That war is lost anyway. Right. I don't
Mm.
care who started it. right? It is a meat grinder. People are getting murdered for no good reason there. It's time to stop the shooting, sit down, negotiate together, and we'll probably end up partitioning up, the Ukraine, because there's a lot of contested territory there, and that's what this is all about, right?
Hmm.
There's the Russians have a piece there, the Polish have a piece, the Hungarians have a piece, the Iranians have a piece, the Moldovians have a piece, right?
Yeah.
They've got people that are trapped within this land and that have been there for for a generation or two, and they don't like it, right? So
Yeah.
they did this with other countries like Hungary, with the Versailles Treaty, where they carved it up after the First World War, and they've had a long-standing peace since, right? So let's end this one way or the other. But yes, Canada should not be involved in foreign wars,
Yeah.
peacekeeping or otherwise.
But the lying is too much because Crimea, they had a referendum to leave Ukraine and join Russia. That was their choice, their right. They were getting bombed by, their own troops. That's like Canadian troops bombing us.
Yes,
That's what I heard in 2014 from a Ukrainian there. Said
yes,
Russia wasn't attacking us; they were saving us.
yeah,
So we've been on the dark side of history by
yes,
really dark people that have been lying to us the whole time for decades. We've got so much blood on our hands,
yeah,
and we would have never participated if we'd known the truth. It's
yeah,
absolutely obscene, but at least the truth is getting out. And if you get your seat, we'll at least have a voice of anti-war
yes,
and logical thinking, critical thinking that seems to be missing in our parliament when all 338,
yes.
all the parties that are in there, the bloc, all of them voted to let children become eunuchs without parental consent.
So, Paul, I just want to double down on that whole foreign war involvement. We can't even defend ourselves. Okay. The liberals have once again, in the last 10 years, decimated our military to the point where it is not functional. Okay. So, I know people in the military. I was just at a wedding last August, and the captain of the ship said he only had 2 weeks worth of ammunition on his destroyer, and
Wow.
that was it. Right. So, and I'm sure it's much worse now because they've sent a lot of it over to the Ukraine for some reason. But here's the real rub. Okay, so I've also talked with the people in the Yukon, the leader of the Yukon opposition party there, and some of the stories it told me it curled my hair. Like he would go to the Arctic Circle, to the Arctic Ocean, with his binoculars and his entourage, right, and he would watch, a Chinese destroyer go cruising by, waving at him, right. Another couple of hours later, a Russian one would go by. Okay,
Oh man.
there's nothing we could do. Nothing we can do. Okay, let's remember what happened last year with the balloon or the balloons,
Yeah,
right? That
just
went
right
from
by
China.
us.
Yes, they
What
drifted
is that?
across North America and finally ended up in the Yukon. Right? They tracked it all the way here, and then it was shot down. Well, guess who it was shot down by? It wasn't us. It was the Americans. So the
Yeah.
Americans have now realized that we are a national security threat to their
We are.
security, right? We are a open tunnel
Yeah.
for infiltrators and Cold War things that are going on, and it's happening, right? And
Hmm.
so I don't blame them for chastising Canada and telling them to get their act together and start defending our country. Let's bring, that billions of dollars that we're sending to the Ukraine, for instance, right? Let's bring that back and let's rebuild our military so we can defend our own borders. I mean, that is one of the fundamental core things that the federal government is charged with, right? Our personal safety and our borders. They're not doing it. They failed. They failed. They should be all fired, all of them.
And it's not even that. I mean, I've had guests from the military, the army, the Rangers, a police force, Vincent Caesar, 32-year veteran, and every single one of them say you don't get promoted unless willing to do the wrong thing. So I mean, would you focus on that as well if you get a seat in Parliament to try to fix the whistleblowing system because these whistleblowers are just not getting anywhere.
And that's not just the military, that's everywhere. Okay,
It
so
is.
Yeah, I mean, look what happened with Raybould, right? Way back when she tried to speak out about
Yeah.
all the
Yeah.
shenanigans that the Liberals and Justin Trudeau was doing personally, right? She
Yeah.
was canceled, right?
Yeah.
So
Yep.
we now live in a culture war where the truth is no longer acceptable, right? So
Right.
that's just
Mm.
wrong because now the people that are, the guardians of the so-called truth can manipulate the truth. Anybody who's read 1984 understands exactly what I'm talking about, right?
Exactly.
This has to be rejected outright.
Yeah.
And they always say, Charlie, so what can we do about this encroachment of this kind of, like you said, evil into our system? Well, in a democracy, and we're still kind of in that and slowly sliding out of it, right? Our
Yeah.
trump card is non-compliance. Okay, so when the government does something, right? Say you're a Christian and it tells you to do something against your religious values or locks you into something like that, they lose the moral authority to govern you, right? Or if there's a bad law that they come in with, right? You you don't have to take this thing. The reason history is shown that the people that stand up against bad laws change the bad laws and
Mm.
create better laws. So we need to stand up against the bad laws, and that includes civil resistance all the way up to including civil disobedience. Canadians,
Mhm.
please, right? If you're not going to stand up, they're just going to keep on going, and you will be enslaved one day.
Well, personally, like we don't have a democracy for sure, and it would be better. But I don't even like democracy because it's mob rule. Like three wolves voting and a sheep voting on supper.
True.
So it's really I would like to see the party system, evaporated,
Mm.
and it become about person. You're voting for a person instead of a political party because we got like in Ontario here we had the NDP brought in the bill 67 critical race theory, which just pushes the parents out again and
Hmm.
teaches white children to loathe themselves and
Yes.
see themselves as racist and
Hmm.
absolutely poison to the minds of our children.
Yeah.
And they all voted except Belinda Carahalius.
Yes. Yes.
New Blue. She
Terrible
was the
stuff.
only one.
So listen, Paul,
So
I do want to double down on what you said there about the voting for a representative. Our constitutional framework is exactly that. Okay.
mhm,
Everybody goes, well, I can't vote for you, Charles, because I'm voting for Carney. I'm going. You can't vote for Carney in Burlington North, Milton West. Okay, he's the leader of the party. He is the candidate in the PN. Okay,
yeah,
so
yep,
you're voting for his his uh, his representative here, who was Adam. Okay, but it's this is a local thing, right? I'm a grassroots guy, and I've been fighting the conservatives on this for 10 years because they've gone from grassroots focus to basically a top down authoritarian model, like the rest of the
yep,
parties out there, and we've lost control. They're basically telling us what to do. They're parachuting in candidates into ridings that nobody wants, and
yeah,
it's just a terrible thing, right? So once again, I implore everybody out there, forget about the block voting concept or voting for the leader, right? You are voting for your representative, right? So here in Burlington North, look at the track record. Look at Adam's track record. For instance, on the
yeah,
CN Intermodal Hub, he failed. Do you really want to reward this guy who's basically giving you he's just blowing smoke up your skirt all the time and not being effective representative of the riding, right?
yeah,
I
yeah,
promise to do that. You know what? I'm not going to be if I get in there, you know what? We don't have a whip, right? There I will not be and I will not be corralled in. I know the other MPs and the conservatives and some of them are really good people, but they have been muted, right?
mm,
They only say what the whip allows them to say. That
yeah.
is representation. That needs to end.
That's what I love about the People's Party because even though Max is, he has his platform, but if it doesn't benefit your riding, you'll actually vote against him. So you have that independence that
Yes.
none of the parties really do have, except the independents and libertarians.
And that's
You know,
exactly the
libertarians.
reason I became a PPC candidate, right?
Yeah.
So, I'm, it goes, oh well, you're with Maxine, he's your savior, and goes, well, I'm a Christian man, I already have a savior, so I don't need another one. But okay, so I'm running here not for Maxine Bernier, not even for the PPC. Okay, I'm running for the people of Burlington North, Milton West. Okay,
Exactly.
they've been ignored for too long. The last election, uh, less than half the people voted here, and like you said, they are disillusioned and they've checked out. They've checked out. We don't.
Mm.
If you don't have the electorate involved in the election, what do we have? We have
Yeah.
a party system now that is self-electing, and they ask you to rubber stamp them back into power with less than 50% of the vote. That's broken. It's broken.
Well, I'm black pilled. I'm black pilled myself. Do you have hope?
Absolutely. You know what? Bad things come and they go, right? So, I'm an old bunny at this now, and we've seen many trials and tribulations in life. And when it's dark, and when it gets the darkest, that the light is coming. So, my
Yeah.
thing is that never give up your hope. That's when things cannot change, right? So, if you have
Yeah.
hope, change it's inevitable. You just need to keep on hoping and band together with the people that also have hope, are of like mind. So if you're like me and you're sick and tired of voting this merry-go-round for the conservatives and the liberals and the liberals and the conservatives and back and forth, and doing the same dance that we've been doing since Confederation, right?
Hmm.
This country should be a paradise. We have natural resources that the world doesn't have, right? Our tax system should be low, our standard of living should be fantastic, and it's not, because it's being stolen actually by our
It
federal
is.
government, which is too big, right? It's become too big, too many grifters, there's criminals involved, a lot of offshore stuff, a lot of stuff's going to Ukraine. It's not going into military or defense, it's going into oligarchs in the Ukraine who are pocketing the money and putting it into Swiss bank accounts. That's a fact.
Yeah, it's very dark. Um, Klaus Schwab resigned today. When you get your seat in Parliament, and I call you honorable minister, would you leave the WEF?
But
Would
I
you be for leaving WEF and
You know what?
WHO?
I promise everybody that I will be Canadian only. Okay, so forget about the UN, forget about WEF, and all the other crazy treaties that we've been
Paris
beguiled into
Accord,
signing here, right?
right?
So I did this as a gun lobbyist. It was terrible things that we did, right? Where these dictators and despots get into the UN, into positions of power and influence, and then
Yeah.
they beguile the world into
Mm.
signing out to some stupid treaty, right? Like the a lot of the things that's happening here with the gun bans in Canada comes from the UN, right? This is a worldwide civil disarmament movement, right? And we all know
Mhm.
where that goes. So when
Yeah.
only the military and the
Mm.
police have arms, no, you don't get less crime. The state becomes the terror, right? And there's lots of
Mhm.
examples of that, and that's worse than the kind of criminality that's going on right now. Anyway, they banned
Yeah.
all the guns in Canada, and what happened? The Liberals, 50% increase in crime across the board, right, including gun
Yeah.
crimes. And it's not the people out there that are lawful Canadian firearms owners. It's these miscreants that have come to this country who will not abide by our laws, and they're just running amok. And the liberals have made it
Mhm.
easy for them because they've got this hug a thug philosophy, and they allow them to get away with it. There's no consequence, and I go back to their changing of the criminal code with the bail. So we have systems now where if you have a career criminal, armed one, who's caught and he happens to be, one of the identifiable minorities out there that is overrepresented in prison, right? They get an automatic ticket out on bail. But what happens? They go back to their gang, they press another pistol into their hands, and they're back to their craft. There was a guy in BC that they arrested almost 1,000 times. The same guy. The police are exacerbated with this. It's ridiculous, right? Those people need to have a consequence. Once again, the government needs to get off the backs of lawful Canadian firearms owners. They are not the problem. They're actually safer than people that don't have a PAL. They're checked every single day. The record shows that they are safe and law abiding. And yet, not just the liberals, but the conservatives also, right?
Yeah.
In history, they've banned guns, right? So none of them are pro-gun. None of them are pro-self-defense, right? They eventually want Canadians to be disarmed, and that should alarm everybody.
So you would vote to allow people to protect themselves and their family in their own home?
Amen. Amen. That is, that is what they call a God-given inalienable right. And the key word here is inalienable, meaning that the government cannot nullify that. They can regulate stuff, but if they're going to handcuff me so that if I'm under mortal threat and I can't defend my life, I don't have to abide by that. That's something that they can't even legislate. I'm sorry.
It's something an enemy would do.
Yes, that's exactly what they do. Yes.
Pol Pot.
Anyway.
Pol Pot kind of stuff. Do you think the CBC doesn't cover you fairly because they know you would pull their funding?
So the CBC and I go back a long way. Okay, so yes, yeah. So way back when we had the websites and commenting, I was always on there chirping on about how the CBC using misinformation and just not even talking about some things, right? So finally, and this was the time when you could actually get to the reporter that was putting out the article. And so I talked to this one woman in Toronto, and I said, "Listen, your article is complete baloney, right? I mean, there's no facts in there. It's all generalizations. There's definitely bias in there." And she goes, "Well, my editor actually said it was okay." And I said, "What?" Goes, "Yeah." Goes, "So, this is all about peddling an ideology and a narrative. It's got nothing to do with truth. The good old days when the press was there as the democratic watchdog, right, to protect the people from the government is gone. They are now in league with the government to protect the government from the people, right?
Yeah.
Topsy-turvy. You know what? That I would defund everybody, of course, right?
Yeah.
It's not even news anymore. It's institutionalized lies, right?
Yeah.
They don't cover me because I'll talk like this, and I've done it many times before. It never gets air, right? So, it's people like you. Thank God that there's still people like you with channels out there, so that people like myself and others can get out there and tell the people what's going on. Pay attention.
Yeah, they have a right to hear different approaches to solutions, because everyone agrees we need solutions. And so you would be for passing laws that make the media liable if they do lie, because right now
you don't have to do anything, Paul. Just stop the funding, and let's end the cartels. Okay, we have Canada is a land of cartels, right, and supply management. That includes our media. So if you don't have competition within the system, right, they collude together, and nothing happens, right? When you have competition, and we kind of have it here, right, where people don't watch CBC anymore, they watch the Truth Table, right? They say, okay, great, I've got an alternative perspective here. I get to watch this. I get some semblance of truth from here. I put together with some other truths that I've had from someplace else, and I make up my own mind. So we need to end all the cartels, not just at the media level, but certainly, in the supply chain system. I mean, I'm tired of paying $8 for a dozen eggs, to protect the egg cartels, or the milk. I'm paying $7 for a liter of milk. You go to the States, you can buy a gallon of milk for $7. Okay, so we're getting ripped off to protect these cartels. I'm not
Yep.
getting anything out of it. The argument a long time ago was, oh well, if we stop our tariffs here, the Americans will come in here and they will just steamroll over everything. Okay, you know what? That might have been the case at one point, but our egg industry, our milk industry, they are world class. I believe in them. I believe that if we drop our tariffs, and I'm sure the U.S. would drop theirs as well too, and free
100%.
exchange of goods and services and everything else, the
Yep.
Canadians are going to come out on top. We have better quality milk right now.
Well, speaking of cartels, I mean, would you remove the liability protections to the pharmaceutical industry?
It should never have gone there in the first place. Okay, so how can you especially drugs, you're injecting this stuff into your system, into your body, right? I
Yeah.
understand that there's always a risk with drugs because they're basically all poison. Okay, there is no
Yeah.
safe drug per se.
No.
If you look at the bell curve on things, yes, the majority may have limited effect from it, but there's always people at either end of that bell curve who may have serious side effects, maybe even death,
Yeah.
right? And that's why and that's not right. That's not right.
No. A lot of what they do is addressing symptoms instead of actually resolving the problem and
Absolutely.
remedy. So
Yep.
they're just dealing with symptoms, and
Yep.
they just want customers, or cures don't profit them.
No, they don't.
And I would love to see that ideology removed from that, because I think it's an important thing that's been also abused
Yes.
and become a profit driven. Would you be for a Doge in Canada, going through department by department and just getting rid of the theft?
So what you're talking about is government efficiency.
Yes.
Well, how come we don't have that now? Right?
Yeah.
Seriously, right? So
Yep.
there should be a department. It should be in the Constitution where there should be some kind of a body of people that are auditing the system.
Yeah.
And have auditors auditing the auditors, et cetera, so that
Yeah.
we can protect our treasure. Right? Right now, there's no such thing. Right? Where they were fleecing us with carbon taxes and regulation and licensing and everything else, right? And it's just going into a bottomless pit, and God knows where it's going. We have no idea, right?
Do you think that?
We've seen these bureaucracies; they've been bloated.
Yeah.
Everybody that's working now in the bureaucracy is on the sunshine list.
Yeah. And they they do everything to protect themselves instead of protecting us. But I would definitely like to see more transparency and public oversight, where people, even on the government website, I would love to see free referendums where you would ask the people what they want.
So this is actually a core belief of the PPC, Paul. So the best way to drive efficiency in the government is to reduce its size and scope. Right?
Yeah.
It's too big and it's too intrusive. It's time to pare it down to the bare essentials. There's no reason why it should be in a lot of places, and yet it is. And I can tell you that if I go there, I'll be Mr. Doge myself, right? And I'll be calling this out all over the place because I know where to look because I've seen it.
Yeah. Well, I want the People's Party to get a majority. I think that's the only way to fix this.
That's going to happen. It's going to happen.
It has to happen.
The mainstream parties are so corrupt now, and so they've been doing the song and dance and this pony show for so long. They don't know how to change. Eventually, if the conservatives get in here, this is the game plan. They promise you this and that and the other thing. They get in and then they retract themselves, right? And then they start tinkering with the bad system. For you gun owners out there, you think that they're going to give you back your AR-15?
Nope.
I'll be surprised. Okay.
Plus, they're not leaving the Paris Accord. Pierre's not leaving the Paris Accord.
No.
And Jack Mead was asked a perfectly reasonable question by Rebel News, and his response was, "I don't respond to misinformation, disinformation." They just love those words. Misinformation is the truth that's uncomfortable.
Yes.
So it's not a lie.
No,
Like the truth table after the 28th, I may have to be calling myself the misinformation table.
don't go there, Paul. I love this. It's great, right? Who knows? Maybe in 5 years, things like this won't even exist anymore, and
I
we'll be
yeah.
doing this in basements with under candlelight, like the good old days,
Mhm.
and freedom fighting times.
Yeah. I would love to be a part of that. I just don't want to do what you're doing. I don't I just don't I can't take it. I'm a musician. I'm not
Yes, I understand. Yep.
I'm too sensitive. And
Paul, and this is a calling. Okay, so it's not for everybody. You know, I
no,
see,
it's
I see other candidates in other parties. I know them well, right? And
mhm.
I've asked them many times, like, sure you want to do this? Because I know they're not steeled enough to take it, right? They're emotionally sensitive, and they're just not gnarly like some of us out there, like myself, right? So, I'm not saying I'm not, going to be affected by some things as well too, but there's some people that this is a blood sport, right? People are going to
It
lie to your
is.
face. Totally is, right? I mean, I
Yeah.
had a meeting with the other day, and Adam got into his gaslighting, mode, and basically tried to shame me and everything else. Was I surprised? Absolutely not, right? He
Crazy.
revealed himself for who he is, right? But
Yeah.
lesser people, would have maybe collapsed under the attack, right? I just, to me, I love this kind of stuff when they start picking on me. I know I'm having an effect, right? When you're
Yeah.
coming at me like that, that means I'm on the right track. Bring it.
I think what we've been dealing with here, like for 50 years, is narcissists. They seem to be drawn, but
Yes,
since 2020, though, what I have noticed is people that would never have run have done it because they see where we're at right now. So we've actually got good people
yes,
in the People's Party trying
yeah,
to save our country and willing to take all the hits. So, I
yeah,
mean, I admire all of yous that are running with Max. I like Max. I've met him a few times, and I believe in the platform. I read all the platforms of all the parties, and and I believe in the platform. The platform's important,
yeah,
and if I think if the People's Party got in the government, I can see a much more transparent and interactive, direct democracy that will raise the voter turnout, that people will want to vote. People will, if they know that they can have a referendum for free without costing the government just by being online, then they know they have a say in real time. They can look at the number and see it. No Dominion voting machines to, change the number after you've already done it. And I think we could really have kind of a euphoric future, a renaissance is we have the potential to have a renaissance in Canada,
no,
but I
we do,
think by
we do.
default, if you free our country, by default, all these war countries that we're playing, fighting with,
Mhm.
may by default turn us into a Gaddafi. You know,
So
oh, you
that's a
want the
good,
gold
that's
standard?
a good point, Paul. And we are certainly under attack, right? And we may not be the actual target. I believe that it is definitely the states. We're soft. The Chinese and the everybody's here. Trying to weaken the border and get at the Americans because they want them to go away so that if the Americans go, I mean that last bastion of freedom of liberty will allow the tyrants out there to run amok across the world, right? So they know it. They know it. So you know they've corrupted our relationship now, and they're continuing to do it. Carney's one of them, right? Instead of sitting down with Trump, and negotiating with this guy, right? He's inanely coming up with more retaliatory tariffs, knowing full well that it's going to, cause more inflation, maybe even a recession, maybe even a depression. And he's okay
Yeah,
with it. Of course he is because he's a multi-millionaire, right? I am not. So
absolutely.
I am not, right? But most Canadians are in this boat. So they've even Stephen Harper said, well, you know what? If we have to go into a recession to bring retaliatory tariffs, to bear here, it's something that's worth the cause. I'm going, are you out of your mind? right? That's why he's not the PM anymore, right? With crazy non-conservative stuff like that. Like, no, I'm not willing to sacrifice my financial security because you want to pick a fight with the bully down south, are not willing to sit down with them and have a man-to-man negotiation. Okay, sit down with this man, and he will negotiate. He will. Right?
Yeah, he will.
Read his book, The Art of the Deal. I did. Right.
Yep.
Guy is.
I would sit with him. I would sit and talk with him.
Yes, that's what politicians are supposed to do. Okay.
Like, why is he throwing his hat for Carney though? Does he want the country to fail so that we could become a 51st state? Do you think?
Well, I think he wants us to be more communist, right? So, that was Trudeau's end game here. Weaken the country, make the people more dependent to the point where the state delivers everything. We've seen this before played out in Eastern Europe, like you said, in Cambodia. It doesn't work. Okay, when the government is not the solution, it is the frickin' problem.
It's the
right?
problem. Yeah.
Don't sit there with your hands out, because you know what? If they choose you, they may give you something, right? But if you vote accordingly and you abide by their narrative, but if you don't, you'll get your bank account frozen.
But we have treason because they've allowed poison in our food and children's cereal, for heaven's sake. I mean, how is that even possible? How does that get through the cracks?
Yeah.
Who got paid off for that? Would you be willing to dig into that as well if you get a majority?
And we know where that's coming from, right? So I was a lobbyist, and I bumped into many lobbyists, dubious ones, many of them in the food industry, right? Who want to, cheapen up their goods, but can't do it because it's got some kind of dubious material in it, or some kind of toxic poison in it, that may make it cheaper, or may make more tasty, or even more addictive, right? But it is unhealthy, and the government will make a deal, and God knows what happens there. There's all kinds of machinations. This is not a big surprise to anybody, right? And it goes into the food chain, and everybody's suffering, right? It's crazy. We
crime of humanity.
Yes.
And and I've seen the same product sold overseas with healthy ingredients and not here.
I know.
So they banned those ingredients in other countries.
Yes.
That company should, stick. I mean, no mother puts arsenic in their dinner, for the children.
Yes.
It just doesn't make any sense to me that this can happen in a country full of really amazing people.
Yes.
I lived here my whole life, and I think I met the most amazing people in the last 5 years, though. Somehow this tragedy brought together the most beautiful people I've ever met. Seriously, amazing people. And I think that this thing just happened to do that, just divide us into two groups. The people that are, mask Hitlers and the non-mask Hitler, the non-maskers and the maskers, the vaxxers and the non-vaxxers. We were deliberately divided, but the reasonable people are the ones that I met, people that you can have a conversation with.
Yep.
If you see there's video going out, the liberals, they just abusing someone at one of their rallies because they knew they weren't, because they had to make Canada great. What is wrong with making Canada great?
Yeah.
We are a great country, a beautiful country. I mean, it's amazing.
You know what? We're all Canadians, right? But as you said, right, we have a corrupt system here, and the government is no longer focused on unity and harmony. It's on, like you said, they want to be the ringmaster, and to do that, you need to divide up the country into tribes, and then they get to choose who gets what funding, what special status, et cetera, and if you're compliant, you continue to get your funding, et cetera. It's a scam. Okay, so the good people of Canada out there are still good people, Liberals, NDP, and otherwise. Okay, unfortunately, we have very, very poor leadership. Right, we need people that are righteous, right, to refocus on the people and get off this, party bandwagon. It's not about the party. Nobody cares about the party. The party is basically a vessel of the local representatives to to do the work for the people at the local level, right? It's not about the party, okay? In other communist countries, yes, it's about the party, and usually it's a criminal elite that runs it, and we don't want that here. It's slowly sliding there already. I mean, take a look what happened with Justin Trudeau. Okay, so what was he when he first came in 2019? I think his net worth was, I don't know, 120 million or something like that, and now it's
40 million, and now it's like 400 million.
How do you do that? On a salary of $280,000 a year or more. Okay, that is corruption. Certainly, probably insider trading. The whole thing, the legalization of marijuana. We know that he had bought shares and all this thing even before he announced it.
Akitas, he bought shares, 40%. But
Pierre Poilievre is a landlord because, they're all talking about doing housing now. He's well suited to make millions as well too. Is that what's happening now? We've got politicians coming into the service of the public, so that they can make millions and then get out. No.
Yeah, well, I think Justin did what he was told. He got rewarded for it. There's no penalties for the crimes he's committed. Like I said, he bought 40% stock in Akitas, and that's where he made a bundle of money. And the lipid nanoparticles that's in that COVID vaccine. So he was a part of it. No wonder he was pushing it because he was profiting from every needle around, across Earth. And this was an attack on mankind.
Totally was.
All country, yeah.
They're all doing it, Paul. My neighbor MP over here in Oakville, Anita Anand, during the COVID thing, okay? I don't know if people understand what happened here, but yes, the masks are mandatory and, the testing was mandatory and et cetera, et cetera. Well, who got the lion's share of the government contract for that? Her husband. What is that, right? And nobody's talking about this stuff. Shocking stuff. The Canadian people need to, just because Carney is now the new leader, okay, he's been involved with this from the beginning, right?
Yes.
Gaggle of criminals are still there. Do not reward them with another term. This time they'll really go at it, okay? You give them a green light, they know that this may be their last chance, and we will suffer and groan.
Yeah, man, there's just it's everywhere. It's the light bulbs, the LED light bulb, all this military grade technology to spy on us. And would you bring back incandescent light bulbs and make life safer and let people have their privacy in their own homes?
The government's got business in business. Okay, so if you want to buy an incandescent light bulb, God bless you, go ahead, right? If you want to buy an LED one, great. If you want to light your home with a kerosene lamp, fantastic. You know what? One thing about the government, it's terrible when it's in business, right? It always runs amok, right? When you have a controlled economy, it always ends up in shortages, bread lines, and the wrong product and dated products that never change. I remember when I was I went to Hungary way back when with my family, and it was still in the communist rule. And I forgot my soccer cleats, and I wanted to play with my friends. So we went down to the latest, the local canteen that had everything, and I said I'd like to, buy some running shoes. So they came out with these funny-looking brown running shoes with some rubber on the bottom. And I told my dad, and goes, I don't like those, right? And the clerk said, and goes, that's all we have. That's communism, right? And I didn't even have size, but I had to take it anyway because that's all there was. That's the nature of a cartel. That's why you're paying for expensive eggs and certain milk, right? And only certain brands of beer in Ontario, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's you know what? Let the free market do its business. They know better. The consumer will drive the demand and they will supply it. The government cannot. It just doesn't. It's not qualified. Not qualified. They think they are, but it's not.
It's really sad that there's only one party that will actually save this country. You would think, you would have multiple choices where you can go a little bit in this direction and a little bit in that direction, but they seem to have harmonized into each other where they're all on the same team pretending to be different.
And they're all the same, like you said, Paul. But you know what? I as much as I agree with a lot of what the PPC is doing and the policies and stuff like that, any party, is not going to save this country. You know who's going to save this country? The Canadians who live here, right? Who've had enough of this stuff, right? We
Yeah.
are, on the ranking thing. I was just reading this thing the other day about these different countries and what they're known for. Like the French are known for being rude. Well, Canadians are known for being too polite, and that's why we have these these people
Narcissist.
abusing us. Yes,
Yeah.
psychopaths. That's another
Absolutely.
good point. You know what? I bumped into so many MPs up there. I'm not going to mention any names, but you know what? I think they've got undiagnosed problems, and there should be some kind of a mental screening thing before you even
Yeah.
become a candidate, right? These people, some
Yeah.
some of them are nuts.
I wonder if, there's a brainwashing technology being used on Canadians. And if there is, would you look into it and have
No,
it
Paul,
stopped?
Paul. You know what? This is. You know what? I don't believe that there's some magic technology out there
No,
doing
no,
this.
no. There is technology though.
No,
ELF
no.
waves.
But listen to this.
Flickering.
Okay, so this is psychology 101. You probably learned it in psych too, way back when. So there's been multiple studies on this where if you put a group of people together, okay, and you have an authoritarian situation, right? 8 out of 10 of those people will do whatever the authoritarian person says, regardless whether or not it's ethical, moral, or otherwise. The
Hmm.
other, the other two, the 20%, will not, right?
Hmm.
So our governments now realize that yes, most people are willing to give them the benefit of the doubt and are honest, trusting people, and they exploit it, right? Once again, very unrighteous, bad leadership. These people
Yeah.
are not qualified to lead the people. Not.
No. No, they're
They're
unfit.
okay. So now those 20% that I talked about before, let's get those people into positions of power and authority, and then you'll see
Yeah.
this country come around.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, the Milgram experiment basically was right before our eyes with the masks. People
Yes,
in their cars still today. I see
totally.
people in the car alone with the mask.
Yeah,
I mean, that's really heartbreaking for me
totally. Yeah.
that they're
So,
that scared. And it should
but
be
you
a
know what?
crime that the government's made them afraid.
Yes, but you know what? Here's the thing, Paul, is that 20% can have great effect on the people that are still beguiled, right? So when you have people that just say no, right? We're not going to take this anymore, quote unquote. Okay, the other people are going to start going, how come they're not complying, and then why they're not believing this, and then they're going to have some self doubt about what's going on, and they will move on the spectrum of thing towards truth. So for those
Yeah.
truth seekers out there and the freedom fighters that are pushing the truth, pushing the truth. Uh, uh, anyway,
Yes, that's
no,
something,
no,
eh?
yes, it's hilarious that we have to push the truth, right?
Yeah,
So that's the age that we're in. It's terrible, but
insane.
don't give up. Keep saying it
Yeah,
because eventually, when two
yeah,
or three are gathered together, things change.
yeah, and yeah, and join me next week at the misinformation table. But yeah, I'm crossing my fingers and my toes because I'm a little scared,
It should be.
because the brainwashing I am seeing,
Oh yeah.
these people still lining up for the liberals. Like, just how could you do that? Don't you know they're hurting children? My God, what's the matter with these people?
Mm-hmm.
It's like
Well,
the education system, though, is also weaponizing the children.
totally are.
Eh, So they first took parental rights. You can't discipline your children, and then the government's weaponizing the children in the schools.
Yes.
So they're just trying to destroy the nuclear family
Yep.
and
Once
and
again, this
any
is
normal
communism 101. This is what they've done
yeah.
before, in Eastern Europe, right? The 1984, got children basically ratting out their family because they've been
Sure.
brainwashed. Okay, I know it's been banned actually in Canada now, which is ridiculous, right? I mean, this is it's a piece of fiction, but the message in there is important information for anybody that lives in a country that values freedom, right? So you can't even read it anymore. So of course, the youth have no context anymore. They're given all this government narrative, and they don't even know better, right? They don't teach history anymore. They teach social studies. Well, that's just a rebranding of propaganda, right? That's what it is, right? Anyway,
Right.
so you know what, that kind of thing, and the way you stop that, and I stopped that at my house. You sit down with your children at the kitchen table, and you discuss your values and principles right there with them. Do not farm out your parental rights to the education system or, greater powers of the government. They will come back unrecognizable, and they won't have your values and principles.
And would you end this climate alarmism?
Oh my gosh, yes. So yes, you know what? The climate changes, right? So I get this all the time in Burlington. I've lived in Burlington all my life.
Oh, I know that just again the use of words, eh?
Yes, totally.
Manipulation and
So
twisting.
get this, Paul. You're probably amused about this. Right? So I was a kid, and every springtime, Brant Street, would flood. The Rambo Creek was a ditch, right? And it would just overflow, right? And Brant Street was a river, and we would go through. My dad had these beaters, and the water would come through the doors, and we'd had great fun, right? So I get this now and go, we just had some big floods last year, and then goes, oh my gosh, look at climate change. Burlington's flooding. I'm going, it's always been flooding, and you know why? It's built on the floodplain. Okay, so that is a natural occurring thing. Okay,
Right.
At first they said that the world was we're all going to freeze to death. Okay, that didn't happen. Then they said that the world is going to boil over. Well, that's not happening either. But one thing that has happened is that they've stolen your money through carbon tax. Just take a look at how much the gas has gone down. 50 cents in some places, right? Over what is that, 5-6 years?
It went back up. It went down here, but it went back up.
Of course, and it will go back up as soon as Carney gets in. That's going to go up to over $2. Get ready, right? And you know what? The climate change will still not be changed. The Paris Accord goals will not be met, right? But you'll be poor, and
it's just going to be bait and switch. He's just going to put the tax on somewhere else.
Totally is.
To the manufacturer.
Anyway, you know what, Paul? It's getting to the point now where it doesn't even matter, right? So these people can tell me that the sky is blue, and I don't believe them anymore. So we are really getting into a point now where the electorate is so disengaged and disillusioned, right? And we've seen this happen before. If you will not voluntarily go along with their lies, what's the next step? State force, right? They will coerce you, right? Through technology, financially, and maybe even through violence, right? So that is the natural evolution of an authoritarian dictatorship. So
I think we have a chance. So all these non-voters, they're the majority, and I just think only God can fix this. But if we could I pray to God that all these non-voters will just wake up and realize what's going on and see that they do have an opportunity.
Yes.
And that's definitely why this show is here. It's about truth and, putting whistleblowers out there just so people can see this is really happening. This is not hearsay. This is from, right from the mouth of the victim.
Yes. I do want to say something about what you just said there, Paul, about, that only God can fix this. I kind of believe that as well, too. So I'm a Christian guy. God puts, people in power for certain reasons. Sometimes it's a good thing, and sometimes it's to curse the nation. So the Canadian people have allowed a lot of things, that are abhorrent, right? Abortion and MAID and the free use of drugs and things like this, right? And if we do, if this doesn't change, Maybe God is just saying that we have to suffer some more.
Yeah.
Maybe they
And
will turn
yeah,
around.
and there's so much hypocrisy. They say they're inclusive and religious freedoms, but then they spit on religion by putting the rainbow on a crosswalk where you
Mm.
walk on it and drive on it.
Yes,
And
yes,
meanwhile, it's a symbol from Genesis,
yes,
the promise not to flood the earth again. And
yes,
look in the sky and see the bow,
yes.
and here they're putting it on the ground, just
Yeah, they've
spitting on
corrupted.
on the word of God.
Well,
They're
look what
just
they've done with the election, Paul. Okay, so
yeah,
they waited for Ramadan to pretty much finish before they got into the throes of the election. And what do? Right? They actually have advanced polling during Holy Week for the Christians.
yeah.
So you have advanced polling on Good Friday, on Easter, and Good Monday, right? What
No
what
respect.
what disrespect, right? I mean, I just
Yep.
saw Jagmeet the other day. They were trying to corner him to say, okay, there's, he's all for Islamophobia and that narrative, but he won't say anything, to protect the Christians. He just won't say it,
Yeah.
right? In the
Yeah.
meantime, the extremists out there are burning the churches almost without consequence. Oh
Yep.
yeah, we
And
looked into it. Yes, it was arson. It was a one-off lone wolf, so and so. Well, if the government wasn't lying, about certain things like the so-called graves in the ground that they
yep.
still haven't found one body yet. But it
Yep.
whips up the fear and the anger in some of the people out there, and
Yep.
they'll do this kind of thing, right? That is once again very bad leadership, right? They're not
It
they're
is.
not uniting us. They're destroying this country.
And the difference between them and the People's Party, if you look at the parliament, watch them, someone will ask a question and then the other person doesn't answer it. They just talk for 15 minutes about something else, deflect, talk about something they've done. We built houses and we did this and that, and never address the question. The People's Party won't they? They'll actually answer the question.
So this is another thing that I've had some pretty good insight into. As a lobbyist,
Yep. Yep.
I would in between lobbies, I would go on Wednesdays to QP, question period, right? And exactly what you just said, right? I would usually sit right above Justin Trudeau, and he had this massive book. So when they asked him something about, I don't know, climate change, he would go to C, and he would regurgitate some canned response that had
Right.
nothing to do with the question, but he answered a question, right? So,
Right.
but here's the thing, okay? They're all doing this, all the parties in there,
Yeah.
right? I
Yeah.
remember during the reform days, I used to go there, and they actually worked together for the
Yep.
common good of the people, and there was actually some working relationships going on. That's
Yep.
completely gone.
It's
Here's the
gone.
real here's the real thing, okay? The people in the gallery, it's like going to a movie, right? They are laughing at our politicians, on the floor because they're clowns, right? They're self-righteous and they're lying and not answering the question. Everybody's
And
laughing.
childish,
And
banging and heckling,
yeah, it's
no
terrible.
respect for each other. They just, they're like a classroom.
Well, and you see some of the people, they dress up in, these costumes almost, right? It's
Hmm.
no decorum, no respect for the
Yep.
parliament. You're representing the people,
Yep.
like Adam, I'm gonna,
Yep.
let's get a GoFundMe going and let's buy this poor guy a suit. You know, seriously, right? And I
I
say that
know it's
deliberately.
terrible.
He's coming out to these things. Everybody else is in a suit, and he comes in some kind of grunge wear that's he's been wearing for 10 years. Like, come on, Adam.
It's inappropriate. Yeah, I agree with you. I agree. Serving in Parliament, there should be at least a respect for your constituents. Because you're representing them, so you do want to look good. You do want to be respectable. You don't want to heckle and bang on your desk when you don't like, what someone else is saying. It's just like I can't watch it. It makes me too angry because
There's
they're
nothing to
not
watch.
answering questions. They're not representing us.
No.
They're playing a little game of narcissist against narcissist.
Yes.
Who can outdo the other
Yep.
and get more seats than the other. Meanwhile, our lives are being destroyed while they're playing this game,
Yep.
and it's not a game anymore.
No.
I want serious people in there that are actually going to enhance our freedom, enhance our rights, um, enhance the military to protect, our coastlines and our border. And we have like 4,000 mafia type fentanyl creators in Canada, allowed to basically terrorize anyone who goes near them. But yeah, I don't blame Trump for wanting stop the drugs. Yeah, I agree. I want that to stop too.
You know
So
what?
who's profiting from that?
Yes. Have you seen? Well, Sam Cooper's doing a great job at exposing all this. He's revealed, the criminal network that, the
Mhm.
Chinese are supplying the chemicals, and the drug cartels are manufacturing it. The illegal money is being, directed through various sources. The TD, okay, is one of them. They were just nailed in the states for doing it. Okay, and I'm sure all of them are doing it. I don't know that for a fact, but if one's doing it, then they're all suspect, right? But the fact that it's been going on for so long and it's not being checked, that means that it's now systemic, and there's a lot of actors that are supposed to be protecting us are not
Yeah.
protecting us. They're actually colluding with the enemy.
Yeah, I'm finding that with the whistleblowers that I've interviewed.
Yep.
It's such a huge problem, and it's like everywhere. It's every department, and like our military, our everybody that's supposed to protect us doesn't protect us anymore.
Well,
And
there's there's
we can't
there's
even
real
protect ourselves.
yes, there's real threats, Paul.
It
So
is.
what's interesting. Just before I came onto this thing, and I get these all the time, right? But I got a random phone call from Beijing, China. I didn't pick it up, but I'm going, wow. That's
What the heck?
that's very interesting. Right before I go onto your show, that I get a call from Beijing,
Yeah.
China. I don't know if
Yeah, they
they're.
don't want you on
I didn't order any wontons.
It's like, we heard you coming to truth table. What you doing? I don't sorry, that was my you see, we have to laugh. I know
Yes,
it's a terrible situation, but laughter is good. You can heal with your laughing, and
amen,
in
brother.
music can heal too. So we have to embrace the good and the bad
Yes.
together, and that's a good way for us to survive because it is terrible.
You know
It
what?
is terrible.
I'm laughing because I know that evil cannot prevail. Okay, it'll have a
Can't
little run. It'll have a little
can't
run, but it will go down. It's inevitable, right?
yeah.
And all
And
these people that are doing it, they'll be vanquished from influence and power, and they'll be shamed and hopefully thrown in jail. A lot of them, right?
yeah.
Because they deserve it. And but it's an ongoing thing, right? So if the Canadian people don't expect righteousness and lawful behavior from their MPs, they're not going to get it, right? If there's no consequence and you keep voting them back in, I'm warning you right now. If you're a liberal right now, you know what's going on there, right? They've
Mm,
stolen, they've lied, they've manipulated things, harmed your kids, right? And
yeah.
you're going to reward them with your vote again, to get more of the same. You know what?
Yeah.
Some people are part of the problem here, and I don't
Yeah.
blame the parties completely. There's a lot of people out there that give this life.
Yeah.
Have some second sober thought and think about this. For God's sake, think about your kids, your grandkids. My own child, has given up on Canada. She's out of here. In the
Mhm.
summertime, she's going to Europe permanently. Breaks my heart, right?
Yeah.
Many like her. Many like her, right?
Self-preservation. There's nothing wrong with self-preservation. And I mean, I'm black pilled too, but I mean, I feel humbled to be a part of this and to be able to do this show. It's very important to me, especially this election. I think this
Yes.
is the
Thank you,
last
Paul.
election. This is the
There's
last election.
This is an essential service, and I thank you for that.
No, I thank you. I find my part is small. I think your part is big because you really are facing the wolves.
Well, you
You
know
know,
what? I liken myself to Daniel in the lion's den, right?
yeah,
So
that's exactly it.
I'm okay. I'm good, right? So I know I'm going to come out, no problem, because I'm
We're on
protected.
the right side. We're on the right side of history,
Yes.
and I I pray that we get a voice into the parliament and some common sense because really it's just so radical and they're all in on it. We have nobody, and you're the only party that will really give us back our protections, our police force, our military, protecting our borders, allowing us to protect our families and our home. I mean, we've lost everything already, and I don't think we have any more time. I think this is our last chance
I think you're right.
to turn this around, and that's why I appreciate you and all the other candidates in this party, because I know what you're up against, and I respect you all. I like you all. I think you're all great people. So we're so fortunate to have this movement happen, and I think it will really bring us together if you do get a majority, and you will get. I got a white pill now.
You know
You
what,
will
Paul?
get a seat.
Here's the flip side of what you just said. Okay, let's just say that the conservatives get in, even with a minority, right? And I get in. You think I'm gonna? You think I'm gonna have a tight relationship with the NDP or the Liberals? No, no.
No
It's
way.
gonna be with the conservatives so that I can pull them towards the line of righteousness and truth, right? The other
Yeah.
ones, the other ones are they've got their ideology and we have nothing in common at that level, right? They
Yeah.
are, they believe what they believe, that's fine, right? But I mean, the alliance would be between the conservatives and the PPC. I was a
Yeah.
reform guy way back when. It's funny how things have come full circle.
It's
We're
great.
back in the reform days.
Mhm.
And I'm part of it.
And we need reform again.
Yes, we do. Yes, we
Yeah.
do. We
And
do.
the thing is, we have intelligent people that have solutions that would work.
Yes.
I think it would be great to teach all the different parties in school, just to inform all the children, but not just to talk about the platform of the liberal government, for example,
Mm,
but also to tell they said this, but they did this.
yes.
So they're a little liar. Teach them real facts,
You know
that
what?
they
And
have
Paul,
deceived us.
and like you said, Paul, you know what? We don't have to reinvent the wheel here. We've
No,
had governments for generations now. We know
yeah,
what works and what doesn't work and what's the consequence of this, right? But when you have
mhm,
an activist government like the Liberals and the NDP who experiment with the people with fantasy policies and ideology, and then we
exactly.
and then we bear the brunt of the failure, that's irresponsible. Okay, this is not some kind of a high school play. Okay, you're playing with people's lives and the country, right? So these people, you know, most of these people are not qualified to, if Justin Trudeau came to my house, I wouldn't let him take my trash out, let alone be my prime minister.
I
Okay.
wouldn't leave them alone with my animals.
Anyway,
No, I just mean, beating them, or you just can't trust anything anymore. Like,
no. Anyway,
um,
so
but I
and it's
mean,
a big
he
problem.
legalized
Even as a
CPR.
conservative, we were looking for candidates to run in certain ridings, and over probably the last 15 years, there's been a slow slide from very high quality people who were
Yeah,
successful in business or whatever it was, right? Who want to step up and do public service because they want to give back. And
yeah.
now we have this pool of
Immorality.
no activists and
Oh, yes, that
people
too.
that are
Yes,
deranged. Actually, they
I think so.
they
Yeah,
think that they can, they've got an axe to grind and they can do it and force it on the people, right? That is
yeah,
not what government's for. If you want to do that kind of thing, do it someplace else. Okay, this is
yeah,
not the theater to do that.
yeah. We need mature people in there,
Yeah,
that know
you
how
hit
to
it
have a
right on the head.
conversation.
Okay, with wisdom, gray hair. Okay, there's experience, and of course, there's wisdom. Right? If you're going to, elect a younger person, yes, they may be very smart, but they're lacking the life experience and, of course, the wisdom, to be the ultimate leader. That's what you are. You are actually voting for. You're for a representative who can discern right from wrong. If they've never been, you know, uh, like Adam, he has no kids. I mean, how can he speak from any authority about, family? Has he ever had to, deal with rambunctious kids or, a wayward teenager, et cetera, et cetera? No, no reference, no experience, no wisdom.
Yeah, while they're promoting their party during an election, they're answering questions. But as soon as they get in Parliament, they stop answering questions
Well,
and they
and
deflect.
I know the whip personally and the conservatives, and I'm not going to say her name. But that's her job, right? So they get together every Monday and they decide on what's going to be talked about, and everybody is told this is it. This is the scope of the discussion. You say this, all things are approved, and you there's no going outside of that box. That's
Our
ridiculous. Okay, so
our
they've
system has
yeah
it.
they've
Yeah,
they've muted your representative, right? They are
yeah,
talking, not representing you anymore. They're representing the party executive and the leader that you didn't even
mhm.
vote for.
Well, a lot of Canadians don't realize that they vote for someone, they still take an oath to the king. So I think if we have a king, they probably should be Canadian. You know,
That's impossible. The
you know what I
constitution,
mean?
the
Yeah,
monarch system doesn't allow that. So my daughter cannot be the head of state of Canada because she is not part of the royal family, and that's
yeah,
wrong. That's that's wrong.
it is.
Totally
Yeah,
is.
we definitely made a dirty deal like the 407 on
Well,
that one.
what, that had its time and place in history. I get it, but maybe it's time to evolve into something else.
Yeah, I would love to be a constitutional republic, no parties, where you get votes because you're a good person. And if you lie, you can be fired. I mean, I would love accountability. And I think everyone would be happier.
Yes,
Canadians are a good people
they are.
and that have been abused by these narcissists.
Hmm.
And we're in our like last attempt before I don't know what they're going to do to us next. Someone's going to sneeze and everyone's going to have to take new needles. They can do it by force this time. I mean, they want to
Good
put
luck with that.
mRNA in the children's vaccines now.
Yeah,
So
good
they're
luck with
just
that.
absolutely railroading parental rights.
You know what? If
In
the
terms
if the
yeah,
truck convoy said anything, that
yeah,
said the Canadians have a limit, and they
yeah.
realize that. Justin Trudeau, he was so afraid that he was whisked away to a military base during that whole thing. Okay, he was a coward, right?
Yeah,
But
disgusting.
he even realized, you know what? There's more of us than there is of them. So
Yeah.
if you're
But
going to screw around and you take it too far, you know, things can get out of hand really fast, right?
bullies are generally cowards.
We are, totally are. You
Yeah.
just need to stand up to them. That's it.
Yep. Is there anything you want to say before we finish up today?
You know what? I just want to say to everybody out there that this is a crucial time. This may be our last chance to reverse things and bring back some semblance of rational government. Uh,
Hmm.
So I implore everybody out there of all political strikes to have deep reflection on what you're doing. Okay, reject the block voting thing. If you have a representative that you trust and is a righteous person, and you deem them to be as such, vote accordingly. Okay, but don't vote for a party or the leader. It's that's why we have this system now. Okay, so
Hmm.
I like I said before, the reason I got into this was because of the kids. Okay, so I've had a good life in Canada. It gave me a lot. I'm very beholding. I want to give back. Okay, but I
Yeah,
want
me
to make sure that, and this is what every parent wants, because I can talk from authority, right? That
yeah,
every parent wants something better for their kids.
yep.
Unfortunately, a lot of parents can't say that in this iteration of time and space in Canada,
Mhm.
right? So vote accordingly.
Yes, and if any of our people watching in the future, if you know someone that lives in Burlington North or Milton West, please share this podcast with them so they can meet the person behind the name on the ballot. You do have an opportunity. Let your friends know if people have lost hope. Let them know that there is hope, and this is the election of a lifetime for Canadians and the future of a free and sovereign Canadian people. Thank you, Charles, for coming on. I want you
My
to get your
pleasure.
seat. I want you to be the honorable minister so we actually have someone honorable in our parliament. Thank you for coming on the Truth Table. I hope to see you again, and I wish you the best next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul, and God bless everybody out there.